welcome back to another episode of HealthCap Weekly Wrap. We're glad you're here. Today we're covering 6 stories that bring together innovation, clinical insight, and practical tools for senior living teams. We're talking about virtual reality for fall prevention, advances in antibiotic testing and treatment, a needle-free glucose monitor, a refresher on pressure injury classification, and a new mental health screening protocol that's improving behavioral health referrals in long-term care.
It's a strong lineup, and whether you're on the clinical side, in administration, or part of the care team, there's something in here that will speak to the real challenges you're facing every day.
Let's jump in with that story out of George Mason University. This one really stood out. Researchers there, along with Old Dominion University, are working on a virtual reality system designed to help prevent falls in older adults.
They received funding from a 4VA grant to develop a program that uses immersive virtual reality to simulate anxiety-inducing walking environments. So imagine walking across a narrow bridge or near the edge of a building, but in a completely virtual space.
And they're using this setup to study how fall-related anxiety affects walking. At first, participants show more instability when exposed to these simulations, which makes sense. But over time, as they repeat the experience, their anxiety levels go down and their walking actually improves. That's the big takeaway. Exposure seems to build confidence and reduce the mental component that often leads to instability.
It's kind of like physical therapy meets psychological training. And what makes this even more compelling is that the research team involved student programmers and graduate students in the development. They've already presented their findings at multiple scientific conferences, and they're expanding the project.
They're now applying for NIH funding to study how the menopause transition impacts balance and fall risk. That's a really important and under-researched area. Hormonal changes can affect coordination, confidence, and gait. So expanding the research beyond age alone is a smart next step.
For senior living communities, the implications are exciting. Falls are consistently one of the top concerns, and while we invest in equipment and safety protocols, the emotional side of fall risk is harder to address.
Fear of falling often leads residents to limit their own mobility, which ironically increases the risk of a fall. So a tool that helps reduce that fear in a controlled environment could become an important part of a fall prevention plan.
It may be a few years before something like this is available commercially, but the direction is promising. Keep an eye on this space if you're in rehab, wellness, or resident engagement.
Let's turn now to antibiotics. There are 2 stories this week from Medscape that touch on different parts of the antibiotic conversation, both really relevant to post-acute and long-term care.
The first one is titled, More Days, More Resistance. Time to Rethink Antibiotics? And it looks at the growing body of evidence showing that shorter antibiotic courses are not only safe, but actually better for many common infections.
For decades, we defaulted to 10-day courses. It was just routine. But now we're seeing that in many cases, 3 to 5 days is enough. Continuing treatment longer than necessary raises the risk of complications, including resistance, kidney damage, and C. difficile infections.
And in long-term care settings, those risks are even more concerning. Residents may have weaker immune systems, more comorbidities, and a harder time recovering from secondary infections.
This is where antibiotic stewardship comes in. It's not just about choosing the right drug, it's also about choosing the right duration. Are care teams reviewing antibiotics after 48 to 72 hours? Are pharmacists and prescribers working together to step down therapy if the resident is improving?
And don't forget the role of the bedside team. Nurses and aides are often the first to notice side effects or clinical improvement. Their input is key to making informed decisions about continuing or stopping therapy.
This is a great time to revisit your community's antibiotic policy. Ask whether duration is part of the routine conversation, or if longer courses are still the default.
The second Medscape story adds a new layer. It features a diagnostic tool being developed by researchers at INRIA in France. They're using portable nanopore sequencing to detect antibiotic resistance in about 10 minutes.
This is a major advancement. Traditional lab cultures can take up to 2 days. In the meantime, clinicians often start broad-spectrum antibiotics, which may or may not be appropriate.
With this new tool, clinicians could determine resistance patterns in minutes. That means better targeted treatment and less reliance on guesswork. It could also prevent unnecessary antibiotic use altogether.
It's still in development and not yet approved for clinical use, but the results so far are promising. The test uses genomic neighbor typing to compare bacterial DNA to known genomes, which allows it to predict resistance quickly.
In a senior living or skilled nursing setting, that kind of turnaround could change everything. You could reduce hospital transfers, avoid complications, and make antibiotic use much more precise.
We're not there yet, but it's something to watch. Diagnostic tools like this have the potential to transform stewardship efforts by giving clinicians the data they need, right when they need it.
Let's switch gears now and talk about diabetes care. This story is also from Medscape and focuses on a new wearable device called the BioLink Shine sensor.
What makes this sensor unique is that it doesn't require a needle. It sits on the skin and uses a color indicator to show whether glucose levels are in range. Blue means stable. Yellow means elevated. There's no blood and no stick.
Now, it's not a replacement for continuous glucose monitors, especially for residents who need precise insulin dosing. But it could be a helpful wellness tool for residents who are managing diabetes more generally, or for those who have cognitive challenges and may not tolerate traditional monitoring well.
It's also user-friendly for staff. A simple visual cue can guide when a closer check is needed without requiring immediate finger sticks every time.
The sensor is still being tested, and the article notes that the wear time has not been finalized yet. But even in this early phase, the idea of a needle-free, non-invasive monitoring option is worth watching.
As we look for ways to reduce friction in chronic disease management, tools like this could make it easier to support residents without overburdening nursing teams.
All right, let's shift to wound care. Medscape recently released a slideshow on classifying pressure injuries. It's a visual guide to staging, and it's a great resource to bookmark or include in staff training.
The slideshow covers all the major stages, from stage 1 through stage 4, as well as deep tissue injuries and unstageable wounds. The photos and descriptions help reinforce what to look for, especially when distinguishing between early-stage wounds and more advanced damage.
Correct staging matters for a lot of reasons. It guides the treatment plan, it affects documentation and billing, and it can influence the outcome of a survey.
This is also a good reminder that pressure injury prevention is a team responsibility. CNAs may be the first to notice a reddened area. Dietary staff may observe appetite changes linked to wound healing. Everyone plays a role.
If you haven't done a wound care refresher in a while, this slideshow could be a great tool for in-services or QAPI projects.
Let's close out with a story from McKnight's long-term care news on depression screening. This one focuses on a community that implemented a protocol using the Cornell scale for depression in dementia, known as the CSDD-4.
This tool is designed specifically for residents with cognitive decline. It doesn't rely on self-reporting, which makes it ideal for memory care or skilled nursing residents who may not be able to describe how they're feeling.
Instead, it uses observational indicators. Staff answer questions about things like changes in appetite, irritability, withdrawal, or physical complaints that don't have a clear cause.
By using this tool consistently, the community saw a meaningful increase in referrals to behavioral health. That means more residents were identified as needing support, and they got connected to the right care faster.
Mental health is an essential part of quality of life, but it's often under-recognized in residents with dementia. This protocol shows how a structured tool can make a big difference, especially when paired with follow-through.
If your community is still using general depression tools like the PHQ-9 for all residents, it might be time to consider whether a more tailored approach would be helpful.
And that brings us to the end of this week's episode.
Thanks again for tuning in. If you'd like to dive deeper into any of these stories, head over to Angie's blog at healthcapusa.com/Angie's-blog.
We'll be back next week with more news, insights, and discussion on what matters most in senior living care. Until then, take care and keep doing the good work.